I'm Chris, and welcome to another episode of Winter Moon Games Board Game Reviews. I'm wearing a Boston Red Sox shirt, but don't let that fool you. I am definitely not a jock. I am 100% red-blooded nerd. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Professor Treasure's Secret Sky Castle. I picked it up at Gen Con a few weeks ago, and I was really drawn in, yet again, by the artwork. It's really cartoony and almost looks like a Disney movie, over-exaggerated keys and treasure chests. So the game is more of a one-on-one puzzle strategy duel type of game. The premise of the game is that Professor Treasure has stolen all the treasure in the land and taken it to his secret sky castle. You, as an adventurer, have discovered where the castle is, and you're going to go there and pillage the castle and take all the treasure for yourself. However, another adventurer has found his way there as well, and that is your opponent, and that's who you'll be dueling with. The object of the game is to collect the most treasure, and at the end of 3 rounds, you'll calculate your points, and whoever has the most points wins. To set up, you're going to start out by making a 4x3 grid of the random tiles that you can find here. Tiles are made up of keys, artifacts, and treasure chests, all with various values and keys needed to unlock them. You're going to start with a deck, either red or blue. Each deck has 8 cards. As the first player, if you're going to go first, you're going to take 3 rows of 2 cards. As the second player, you're going to take 2 rows of 3 cards. Don't worry, you'll get a chance to switch at the end of the first round. There's going to be 2 cards that you take that you're actually going to discard randomly, so all your cards are chosen randomly. You don't get to look at which ones you're picking. Both players have the same set of cards, so you may not know what your opponent has discarded, and they don't know what I've discarded. I'm allowed to look at my discarded cards, but I'm not allowed to look at any other cards that I've placed until the time I pick it up. Keys are not worth any victory points at the end of the game. Artifacts are worth X amount of points per artifact that you have. So if you have 1 artifact, it's worth 1. If you have 2 artifacts, it's worth 2, not 2 per artifact. The first thing you're going to want to do is try to get a bunch of keys, as many keys as you can possibly get, because keys are needed to unlock the chests. Let's say I took a key. Once I get a key from the main grid, I put it in front of me. It's now in my inventory for the rest of the game. They do not go back into the pile. If I take a chest from the grid, it has the value on it, which this one is 3. It also shows me here that it's 1 key to unlock. Now, if I have a key in my inventory, I take this chest. At the time you acquire the chest and put it in your inventory, you must have a key to go with it. So the keys are immediately consumed in the chest that you've just picked up. Now let's say that I wasn't actually able to get a key before I got a chest. I'm still allowed to take a chest. So I'm going to take the 3 again and the one that requires 1 key. There are skeleton key cards. These are required if you don't get a key from the grid. So as soon as you take a chest, you don't have any keys, take a skeleton key card, and it goes and it consumes with your chest. Now, skeleton keys are worth negative points at the end of the game for as many as you have. The first one doesn't count as any negatives, but those subsequent ones do. So all the cards have a number in the top left corner from 1 to 7. 1 card doesn't have a number, it has an exclamation point. I'll explain what that means in a second. But every player, like I said, has the same cards. What you get for your starting hand will remain to be seen. The scout is number 1. The scout can be placed on any tile, and at the time of resolution, which I'll talk about in a second, he's actually allowed to swap a tile that he's adjacent to in order to, let's say, move a tile out of your opponent's way so they can't take it on their turn. Speaking of swapping, the lookout, which is card number 2, allows to prevent swapping from the scout. So if you place this card on top of a tile, the scout of the enemy will not be able to swap with it. Now I mentioned an exclamation point card, and that's the thief. And the thief is actually placed on the outside of the grid, not on top of one of the squares. The thief is actually triggered, and the way he's triggered is by an opponent taking a tile from the row or column that he is in. The sentry, however, can be placed under an ally card and prevent stealing. So if this card happens to be under a tile that the opponent's thief tries to steal from, he won't be able to do that because my sentry is protecting my ally and the tile beneath him. Because he goes under an ally, the card on top of him has to actually resolve first. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but I'm just kind of getting through the abilities and what they do. I had talked about cards that go on the outside of the grid as well, like the thief, but this one is the captain, and he's your number 4 card. He goes in any row or column, and he can take a tile from any row or column when it's time for him to resolve. I might as well explain what it means when I say time to resolve. once both players have taken their turn and all the cards are out on the field, you're going to actually resolve the cards in numerical order, starting with the player who went first. So my number 1, my opponent's number 1, my number 2, my opponent's number 2, and so on. As long as you resolve them in numerical order, you're fine. Unlike the captain, who can sit outside the grid and take any tile in his row or column, the jeweler actually has the same function, but has to be inside the grid, thus making her vulnerable to cards that can go on top of her and stop her from doing her action. The Smuggler is your number 6 card. If the Smuggler is on a tile that is stolen by an opponent, she immediately takes the tile adjacent, either up, down, left, or right. And last but not least, we have the Explorer, who's your number 7 card. Probably one of the more powerful cards in the game. He's actually placed on an empty tile or on top of any other adventurer in the game. Because he's a 7, it's most likely going to be the fact that if you cover one of your opponent's lower numbers, let's say I cover my opponent's 2, that means that the card beneath this won't be able to be resolved until my 7 is resolved, because you're going in numerical order. Okay, so in the interest of time, I've actually just moved this along and I've just kind of demonstrated what a round might look like after both players have taken their turns. I'm going to start with my scout, and I'm allowed to take the tile beneath me, but also swap with a tile adjacent to me, up, down, left, or right. If you look below, the enemy's lookout is there, and he actually prevents me from swapping with that tile. So I think I'm just going to go ahead, because I look over here and the captain is on the adversarial team. He can take any card in this row, any tile in this row. So I know, let's say my opponent wants artifacts. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to swap these 2 tiles so that he can't get the artifact in this row. And then I'm going to take my key, and then I'm going to go into exhaust my scout, so he just goes to my discard pile. I take my key, and now it is the next player's turn to do their first card. And they also have a scout here, number 1. And it looks like the same scenario here, where I had what was my card here? Oh, yes, I had a lookout here, but the opponent's Explorer blocked that, and because he's a 7, I won't be able to take my 2. So the scout, let's just say, would swap with this key. They don't always have to swap, but it's probably a good idea too, because it really messes with your opponent. And then they take the one that they're under, so this key would go to the opponent, and then this scout would be exhausted. And this kind of goes on until all of the players have had a chance to exhaust their action. At the end, when you guys have resolved all of your cards, and go ahead and bring these guys back, whatever's left gets discarded, and we would start a new round. You keep any keys you've retrieved from the first round for the rest of the game. This game is really simple. It's just one of those games that anybody can play. It's very quick to learn. I will say that the instruction poster is a little... So that pretty much wraps it up for Professor Treasure's Secret Sky Castle. This game is put out by Level 99 Games. It is designed by Jason D. Kingsley. It was only $25. For the amount of fun, the replayability, and the quickness, and the 2-player that is really rare these days, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I guess my only couple critiques would have been a little bit of a better instruction manual, because this is a little bit overwhelming and it kind of makes me not want to look at it. And while the artwork is like a Disney film and it's really fun and whimsical, maybe a little bit more detail on the tiles. It's just a vase with a generic background. Kind of gave me a Miyazaki vibe when I saw the art, like a Howl's Moving Castle. And the heroes, they're different and well drawn, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more detail on the tiles, that's all. But overall, it doesn't deter from how fun the game is, and I would highly recommend it. So thanks for watching another episode of Winter Moon Games Tabletop Reviews. Check us out at wintermoongames.com/reviews. Also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If there's anything you'd like me to review, please comment or send me an email. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you later.